Hello, welcome to the first in a series of videos. We're going to cover topics related to how do I rig the ships that I got for Black Seas. So stay tuned and learn how we're going to do this. Alright, in this first video we're going to cover really the basics. I've seen a lot of posts on forums and a couple videos where modelers have had some difficulty or expressed some difficulty in actually rigging the ships. So we're going to kind of cover the basics, and I've got some tips for you so that even if you haven't had any experience dealing with model ships at all, you'll at least be able to do a respectable job with the rigging as provided in the kits from Warlord Games. Okay, so let's take a look first at what you need. Alright, before we get started with the rigging part of things, let's talk about tools you need. Now, this really isn't anything you probably don't already have. So we're going to go through it. Obviously, you're going to need the thread that Warlord provides. So without that, you're not getting the project done. Alright, honestly, I recommend a super glue of some type. I prefer it not to be too thin. It should have a little bit of viscosity, some thickness to it, so that it will stay where you want it and not spread around too much and hit things you might not want it to. It just makes it easier to apply. On that note, some sort of a needle or toothpick with the finest point you can find to help you apply that super glue to the specific spot you want, because the easiest way to do the rigging is to super glue the knots along the way. Okay, so got that taken care of. Now these, some sort of clips of some sort. You can use paper clips, sorry, not paper clips, clothespins. There's some small ones you can get. Just something that has just a little bit of weight, because you'll use that to kind of hold some of the strings and threads taut. This is a hair clip from the beauty section of some store. Very easy. You just need to be able to hold the thread just a little bit to kind of keep it out of the way and allow the weight of the clamp to kind of hang and pull it taut enough so you can apply the glues. Tweezers, invaluable when trying to work with these tiny little threads. Okay, and then finally a pair of small scissors. These are sewing scissors. Fiskars is a great, probably the most common one out there. Very sharp, and you definitely want to make sure you've got that fine point, because you want to be able to get into small spaces with the rigging and cut the thread when you don't, the part where as close to the knot as possible. And we'll go ahead and talk about how you go about doing that. All right. So let's move on to just what is rigging in general. In case you are unfamiliar, I don't know if anyone is, but rigging is any of the ropes that basically make the ship work. There are several different types. The ones that are most prevalent in the Black Seas game, the way they've modeled them, are the stays and backstays. And we'll go ahead and talk more about all those different types. But you should, if you get a chance, to find a copy of something like this. Ship Modeling Simplified is a very, very good book. Matter of fact, there are a few pages in here that really help you understand how the different sections of the ship get rigged. And I would strongly recommend you get this, or find a place to, or maybe online where they've got some of the charts. But this is one of the most helpful, just to get an understanding of what is it that you're dealing with. Now, granted, this is a clipper ship which has all the sails you can imagine and all the lines, but it gives you a kind of a feel for how the rigging is laid out, generally speaking. But to be honest with you, it's best to look at actual models. All right, so rigging in general, there's a couple things you need to know. The first is there's a lot of it, which I'm sure you may have seen in movies and pictures before. And the keys are really the ones that are black. Now, rigging in general there's three different colors that you think of or can be thinking of. One is black, and then one is kind of a tan or maybe a gray buff kind of color. Those are the three colors you want to think about. Most of the rigging we're going to deal with today is going to be black. The reason it's black is it's been tarred because they're fixed in position. They don't move. And as a result, they don't need to run through pulleys or blocks. They don't need to run through anything. They just stay there and hold something in place. Now, there are a couple exceptions to that we'll talk about a little bit later. But in general, most of the rigging you see on a Black Seas ship are these black stays or backstays. Okay. Now, the most valuable way of finding anything out is look at pictures of the actual ship. Now, unfortunately, there's very few of those around, but the HMS Victory and the USS Constitution are two exceptions. Those, they actually are the historical ship with the rigging intact, so taking a look at those photos is invaluable. Other ships, most of them are reconstructions. Some may not be true to scale. Now, there's an Indian merchantman up in Sweden. That probably is a lot closer to the real rigging and outline layout of the ship. I'm not so much sure about the Trinidad in Spain. I think it might not be an exact replica, so be careful there. But there is a way around that. It is to look at arsenal models. Now, an arsenal model is the ship that was built. It was a model of a ship. It's a huge model, but it's built off the plans that are going to be used to build the actual naval vessel. The reason it's built is to evaluate the design for flaws and potential issues, and to then put it in front of the Naval Review Board of whatever country and get approval and suggested tweaks. Those arsenal models are built exactly like the real thing will be built. So from it, you can see how they intended the rigging to look. Everything about it is as accurate as you can get for the time the ship was built. So, it's pretty good. Now, I will say, I'll bring up one topic, one concept that I picked up from the model railroading days, and this is invaluable to any of us doing any of this modeling here. That is, quote, there is a prototype for everything. Now, prototype is, what the real world example of it. And that is very true in rigging. Rigging of a ship actually changed over the course of its life, usually not just because of rebuilding or redesign, much in the case of some of the Spanish ships, but also, and I'm going to call it the whim of the captain, but it's not just the whim. I mean, he had some reasons to modify the rigging slightly. In addition, the design of ships is not consistent. I mean, a frigate is not a frigate, is not a frigate. They're all different flavors. Now, there may be a class of ships. For example, the Diana from in Spain. There were several ships. Another one is the Ninfa. They're the same pattern, the same design, the same ship, if you will. So you can use that to represent. You can use a model of the Diana to represent any of those other ships. But having said that, the whole point here is that don't get too hung up on, is this exactly the way it should be? I mean, it's 1/700 scale. If you're not belaying these things, you're not really doing a super detailed modeling job. So let's just stick with let's make it look good on the tabletop. And that's why we're going to stick with what Warlord gives us and just jump into actually how do we do the rigging. Now, the cool thing about Warlord Games' rule book is they've actually done us a favor, and they've actually included inside the rule book kind of instructions on how to rig up the ship. And these are good. I would suggest this is a way to do it. This is not the way to do it. But we're going to use it today and kind of discuss how we go about doing this rigging. If you follow exactly along, the different steps, you'll end up with a good-looking ship. And matter of fact, let me show you one. Okay. All right. This is a ship a friend of mine did, following exactly the instructions in the rule book. Looks perfectly fine, nothing wrong with it. What I'm going to suggest to you here in this video are a couple modifications to make it even simpler. Okay. I got another motive for simplifying it. Is I'm going to actually be using some other techniques, and there'll be some differences going in the next few videos where we'll actually be able to build on the existing thread we're using right now. We would only do it all in black. Okay, but these are actually, if you do what is in this video today, you'll get the basic rigging done. You'll have a good looking ship without actually a lot of effort, a lot of tediousness. There will be some, can't get around that. It is thread after all. So, and we are dealing with 1/700 scale. So let's talk about the knots we need. Okay, to do what I'm going to suggest in this video, we need 3 different knots. So let's kind of go through those. All right. So in the rigging method I'm going to show you today, which is a sort of a simplified method from what Warlord has, you're going to need a few different knots. And I actually recommend these knots anyway, because they're going to make your life a lot easier. So we're going to actually use this tube and the actual rope to make it easier for you to see what the knot looks like, because watching this in thread is going to be impossible. So the first you're going to do is you're going to need to start by securing your rope or thread to a position, a mast, right? And the best way to do that is use the 2 half hitches, because that one is one that we can use to slide the knot up against the mast. So you'll bring it around and you'll loop it through like this, almost like you're doing an overhand knot, okay, which is technically called a half hitch. Then you bring it down past itself back to the standing line, and then you just do it again like this. Now the advantage of this knot is that it slides up the rope toward the mast, so you can actually use your tweezers to kind of help push the knot against the mast and pull it snugly, okay, even with thread. And then when you're done, you can glue that and clip it. So alright, so that's the first one. That's when you're going to use that knot mostly when you are starting a rigging line. The next one is when there's several points, especially on the bowsprit, where the lines actually should come to a point, and then it's almost like a V or W going up the masts towards the mast. So to do that, you want to use as little thread as possible. Instead of doing a knot, a finishing knot there, and then starting another knot to run the next line, why not use one of these next two? Now, one's a lark's head knot, one's a clove hitch. Both are very good. What they're going to do is they're going to help you keep the center, the thread coming off the center of the bowsprit. That is important if you want it to look really good. So let's start by doing the lark's head knot. Okay, this one you're going to take essentially almost halfway through in the middle of the rope, because again, this line comes from the mast. This is going to go back up to the mast. Okay, so it comes underneath, crosses over, goes back behind the mast of the bowsprit, comes up, and then goes down underneath. Okay, so that it looks like this. And so now when you pull, you can see it's coming off the middle instead of the side. So that's a nice way to do it. And then what will end up happening is one rope will go in one direction, one will go in another, and they come off in the center like that. Really easy. Okay. The other one is the clove hitch, which it will work. Some of you might be more comfortable with it, might not, but it will work. So again, you have this long rope, you're in the center of it, you come around like this, and you're going to cross it, holding it in position, and then you can come back here, and this actually goes underneath this position here, this rope here, okay, so that it looks like this. Okay, that's the way it looks. Okay, and again, when these come off the spar, they come really, really, really close to the center. Not as good as the lark's head, but still pretty good. Now, the easiest way to do this is actually off the mast. So here's how the kind of a cheater way. You take the thread and you put your right hand behind your left hand, and you make a little loop like that. Okay. Then you pinch this portion, this cross here. Then you take this, and here you turn so that your hand goes behind the rope again. Okay, and this loop goes over this loop. And then you can stick that over the mast, and then boom, it's done. Okay, so you can pause the video, go ahead and practice it a couple times. It's great if you have a small piece of rope like this to help you, but this will make your job a lot easier when it comes to doing the rigging. So now, the easiest one you're going to use is usually going to be done when you're finishing off a knot, simply because it's really hard to do any other knot, and that's the overhand. Okay, we'll actually do a couple different versions of it, and that's our regular. It's the one we're all used to, where you bring the rope up underneath itself, and you end up with that. Okay, that's an overhand knot. This is advantageous because when it's in thread, you can actually pull it tight enough where it'll hold itself just for a little bit, while you can apply a little bit of super glue on it to hold that in place. And then you can finish with another one. Okay? And now you'll end up with, this is actually a granny knot, and here the tag ends go off, they're perpendicular to the first lines. Or you can use a square knot, which is actually, you'll notice how this comes over the top, so when you cross these, you're going to put this so that that loop also comes back up and over, and now they come in parallel. Honestly, at the scale, I don't know if it really matters. However, if you're finding that your thread's going off in a weird direction, you might want to practice this particular knot. This, again, putting the super glue on this will hold it in place. You're done. You can just clip the rope or the thread when right next to the mast. All right, so now we're actually going to move into an example of rigging. We're actually going to, generally speaking, follow Warlord's guide. However, there are a couple tweaks I'm going to make. Let's take a quick look at this arsenal model real quick. It's of the Spanish ship, the Diana. Now, you'll notice up on the bowsprit here, take a look real close. The rigging actually comes from the mast down to a point on the bowsprit, and then from that point goes back up to the mast. And this actually zigzagging can occur multiple times along the bowsprit. So these lines are where a lot of these lines are where you're actually going to run your jib sails, those small triangular sails that go at the front of the ship. And for brigs, you're going to need 2. For frigates and larger ships, you're going to need 3 of those things. So we're going to tweak Warlord's guide, and we'll kind of see how this is going to play out. Okay, for this particular segment, we're actually going to use a model ship from Blood and Plunder to make it easier for you to see everything that we're talking about here. You'll notice the very first step in the rigging of the ship is actually to run, I'll put a picture up here, from the top of the mainmast, not the top, but right above the yard arm, lowest yard arm of the mainmast, down to both the front end of the ship underneath the bowsprit and right to the back of the front sail, foremast. The problem with this is it's not really how most ships are done. Matter of fact, take a look at the picture of the Victory. You'll notice it goes from that yard arm, the mainmast, down to the bottom of the foremast. Okay, nothing up in front. What we're going to do then is you're going to follow the example of what I'm going to show you is probably the simplest way to do it. It won't work for the Victory. You're going to have to actually tie from the top under here where the bowsprit, where the main yard arm, and the bottom of the foremast. You'll tie one there. 2 F hitches here, goes down to your 2 F. You use 2 F hitches. You can use a half hitch down here. But the easiest way to do it is use the black thread, and this is most. If you take a look, here's the arsenal model of the Diana again, and you'll see that from the mainmast here, it actually goes down to the front of the bowsprit. So the best way to do that is to start by taking your thread here and then looping it up like this to right above this mast. Okay, move that up here so you can see that. And then here you do your overhand knot. Okay, this is actually the easiest step, because as you go through here, now this on the Black Sea ships, you can move this. This is going to be glued in place, and this will hold its position right there. And against this mast, you've got the two lines, and the two line, that's very typical of this being two lines front to back. So here again, just a loop here, no knot up front. Okay, here. Back here, you use an overhand knot in back. Once the overhand knot is tightened, just enough to hold this taut, use a little bit of super glue on your needle and touch the knot. Then tie it off as a square knot or granny knot from that point. Okay, so that is the next step. I'm going to take this off. Alright, now here, this is where where we're going to talk about the lark's head knot and all this. From the front, you're going to have a main stay from the top of the yardarm here to right about here on this. That is going to be just one line, just like you had one here on the Victory. You'll have one here just to hold that. That's holding the tension between the two masts. But after that, you've got running line. So you're going to take from roughly the same spot. Again, take a look at the models. I would suggest you do it from here. So use your 2/2 hitches. Now, obviously, your sails are going to be glued in when you actually do this, but or your masts are going to be glued in. But I haven't finished this model. But I figured it'd be easier to show with this rope than it would be with the actual thread. Though we will do the thread in a second. Okay, so now there it is. Now we're going to come down here, and we're going to do the lark's head knot. So the easiest way to do this is to put a loop in like this, okay, where this end line that you saw in your right hand comes behind, okay, and then you slip that over. Then you can come over here, and then again this goes back behind, and you bring the end up through there. Whoops. There's your lark's head knot. And then this one, the lark's head knot can be fiddled with so that you can pull this segment tight, which is what you want, and then the rest of it can be pulled tight, and then this will go up to the next spot, which will be right up here. Okay, and then you can finish it off there with another overhand. Okay, so now you got jib can run here. This way actually can come back down here. You've got a jib can be on either of these runs. Okay. All right, so that's generally how you do it. So let's go ahead and take a look at using the Black Sea ships. All right, so the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to take that, get some thread. You get plenty on the spool, so don't worry about wasting it. You'll notice that the thread does twist. That is actually very normal for any type of regular rope or thread. So that's going to be what's going to be tough to when you're working these things. Just trying to handle that. But just give yourself enough. You're going to run from here to beneath the bowsprit. So I'm just going to, oops, sorry about that. I'm just going to cut real quick. Okay. Righty now. So I start by taking this and putting it right underneath, holding between two fingers here, and then I slide it underneath to the base of the bowsprit there. Now you can, though you don't have to, you can tie an overhand knot, and I'm going to do that just because it makes it a little bit more stable. It keeps it in place better. Okay, so here you want to take a clip of some sort and apply, like that, just to hold it in place. So you've got some pressure. Makes it easier to tie the knots, because you'll bring this around. You can use the tweezers to feed it under itself, like this. Then again, overhead knot goes through. There, now I've got my overhead knot. And now I can do this. And just push it all, make sure it's all the way back down there. And boom. Okay, alrighty. Now I can apply a little bit of super glue right to that spot there. I'm not going to on this because I haven't finished painting this. So I probably won't. Actually, I will do it on this one. Okay. So take a little bit of the super glue. There, let's move it over. And I'm going to put it right on the edge, just a little bit there. And then apply that to the top of this overhand knot. Okay. While it's there, I just pull it tight, let it set, which won't take too long. Okay, and then I'm good to go. Now the next step is to bring this up on either side of the foremast, up to behind the main yard arm here. And again, this is why using a clip is very helpful. You'll bring it down there. Okay, and you can see how weight of the clip holds that taut. You zoom in a little bit more. You see how it's taut because of the weight, just the weight of that clip. If I loosen the pressure, you can see how it. So that's why the clip is very useful, as well as giving you the ability to tie the knot more easily. So here again, we're doing a overhand knot. So I bring this across. I'm going to use my tweezers to reach under behind, pull it through. Okay, there we go. So now I have using overhand knot, I've got, boom, there it is. Okay. Now if I tighten really tight, you can see this, how that mast bends. So be careful, don't put too much pressure on it. Just put enough so that it holds there. Okay. Again, apply a little bit of glue right behind there with your needle, right here, and wait for it to dry. And then again, you can finish off with the rest of the overhead knot, or you can tie it in front. But that's all you need. And now you'll see that front line is doubled, which is what you expect on many of these ships. That first one is doubled. That's the only one that's doubled. The rest aren't. Okay. So the next one is going to go from here, right below this, in this space, down to the bowsprit, kind of right behind or right ahead of the figure. Just take a look at your model. So yeah, your arsenal model, your picture, whatever, and then you run with that. So again, here's where we're going to use. I'm not going to clip those because I actually want to make some changes with this model. I'm going to leave it fixed there because that's perfect. I don't need to do any detailing up here, but there's some changes, a paintings thing that I need to do back here, and I don't want this in the way. Alright, so that's why we're not finishing that off completely. Alright, so now I'm cutting off a small segment of thread to go from the bowsprit to the main mast, or sorry, the foremast. Now here, the easiest way is to start at the foremast and make your, again, it's really good if you affix using a like clothespin or something, affixed to one end. Let me show you that. Okay. That way it can be held taut. Okay. Alright, so You can use this by, again, cross over, put that through here. You can use your fingers. You have a lot of slack in here in this line, so you can actually work with it. You can see it wants to move on its own. That's a common complaint I've seen in a lot of forum and videos, and that's just the nature of the thread. So you're kind of stuck there. You can use your tweezers to go through and pull it through like that. Okay. Now as you pull tight, make sure this is where you need it to be. So there's the first step. Then I go back here and I push this through here. Oops, now let's pull. There we go. And now I can pull on this line. And you'll notice how it's sliding up to the, just like that, boom. There, it's there. Now that is in position, and now I can bring this down here. But again, I want to fix this with super glue back here. So a little bit of that, again, on the needle, and you just touch from behind, okay, just where it sits, and then pull this forward, okay, just to hold it in place. At this particular moment, you're not touching the knot with the glue, you're fixing it to the lower part where you want it on the back of the mast. You can then, once it's in place, you can go ahead and put some glue on the knot itself, again keeping some pressure, okay, and then you can go to the next step. And this is where things get a little bit more difficult, because you don't have any way to really hold that bottom line in place when you are tying it off, and so you want it can be a little difficult to get centered. So now I'm going to use a little trick again with the super glue. I'm going to start by taking, and I'm going to use the clip again eventually. I'm going to run this under here, and then I'm going to run the line thread behind it, you see, like that, and then position it where I want it here. Use a clothespin or some clip to help put some pressure on it to fix it where I want it to be. And what I can do here, this is the great part, is I can use the pressure of this over the top of that see the bowsprit yard arm? And I can pull it forward so that I'm forcing this stay to be centered on that bowsprit. Okay? See how that was? Whoops, sorry about that, guys. Right there. See that? And now it's actually centered. If you take a look, see. So once it's there, now you cheat. You get a little bit of super glue, and I do mean a little, okay? And you place that right behind that knot, or not, it's not a knot, right where the two ropes, the two join, okay? And make sure you get it on the bowsprit as well, because you're holding it in place that way, okay? Now that has to set for a bit. Once it's set, I'll show you what you do. Alright, so now we're back. Alright, it's set up pretty well. So now I'm going to take this and I'm going to bring it down, okay, on the same size it was going. Okay, I'm going to let go of the clip, okay, because I'm going to need to use this. And now that that's in place, I'm going to bring it around and I'm going to use an overhand knot here. Let me widen this out just a bit so you guys can see. Okay. Bring it through here, grabbing it. And then coming underneath the yard arm. There. Okay. Now, alright, so you'll notice there is a little bit of slack in there. That's actually not too bad. The reason for that is actually the mast wasn't completely seated, so I had to shift it down a bit. But you can actually remedy that with the backstays when they go in, which go from the mast itself back. And you'll notice when I pull back on this mast, it straightens that out. Okay, so we'll talk about those backstays in a little bit. But anyway, so there's how you tie it down. Overhand out, a couple of them, and then again you finish it off with a little bit of super glue on that needle. Alright, so that's essentially the steps in doing the rigging as far as the knots and everything. Now, before we go any further, I want to talk about one thing first we're going to do is now I want to clean up some of the threads. So this is where the next piece is important. These tiny scissors are extremely important, especially when you get further in the model, you got more rigging in place, because you're going to grab this and you're going to part the scissors just a little bit like that and actually take your fingers out of the hole. Okay, you're going to hold it like this, okay, like a pencil, okay, keeping it really thin, and you're going to use that. Now you can use the actually scissor it, okay, like you normally would right here, or if there's a lot of rigging in place, you can hold it in place, catch it in the V, pull, and then boom, it just pops right off. Okay, so that's the other way of doing it with using it. But the scissors, that's why the scissors are extremely important. You'll crop it off as close to it as possible, and then when you're done with that, this step is crucial because you don't want it to unravel eventually. So you want to make sure that the knot is covered with super glue. Super glue here is acting as a varnish to seal the knot and hold it in place pretty much permanently. Okay. So, all right. So let's take a look at this picture real quick. This is the model of Diana, and here's the Arsenal model for it. Now you'll notice in the front, it's got, so you see how these running lines go from the mast to the bowsprit, and then from that same point go right back up. So this is where we're going to simplify what's on Warlord's examples. We're going to, you can see there's a whole lot more rigging on this, I think you'll be able to see, but ignore all that for now. Let's just focus on just the bowsprit. Okay, so you'll see, and this is where the lark's head knot comes in real handy. You can see I did not use it on this point. My mistake. This is how I was learning how to do this, right? So I took from just following the Arsenal model, from this point on the foremast, the second arm up, yard arm up, go down to here, then up to the next yard arm, and then back down to here. And then so there's a little bit of a letter N, and I could put my two foresails on there, or jib sails. Now, the Diana model, Arsenal model, only had two showing it. Honestly, when you're sailing a ship, you're going to put as many jibs out as you need. You may not run with all three. So even though there's 3 in the frigate kit, I only put 2 out. Alright, so use the lark's head knot here. Again, go from this point up here. You use the 2 half hitches down here to the lark's head, up here to, again, another lark's head, and then back down. You can finish it off the same way we finished it off just a minute ago. Alright, so now I'm not going to actually run you through the lark's head knot and actually rigging up the front, because in the next video we're going to talk a little bit more, because I'm not going to use this same thread, this heavy thread, on the rest of the rigging. You can feel free to run through all the other rigging examples and run your lines, but the fact is I'm running things a little bit differently. I'm trying to be a little more scale modelish, and you might be able to tell from here. You'll see I've got different rigging sizes. So here's the double mainstay with thick line, and then this is with thinner black line, and then I've got other rigging here with, again, thinner line. So if you're interested in that, you can go to the next video, and if you want to actually see how to rig up the front, go ahead and take a look at the next video in the series. Alright, thanks, hope you guys enjoyed this. Share, like, and subscribe if you want, and I'll see you in the next video.